Coming to you live from the Business RadioX studio, it's Franchise Marketing Radio, brought to you by IDS, an award-winning digital marketing agency that delivers integrated marketing solutions for franchisors, franchisees, and franchise development teams. Learn why over 75 brands depend on IDS's team of dedicated marketers and client service professionals to deliver a strong ROI on their marketing investment. Go to idsfranchisemarketing.com for a complimentary digital audit and consultation.
Hello, welcome to another exciting episode of Franchise Marketing Radio, where we dive deep into the world of franchising and explore stories behind successful franchise brands. And I'm your host, Rob Ganley, and today is no different. In fact, I've got a double treat for you. We're joined by two remarkable guests from Ivy Kids, an early education center franchise. First, we have Amyn Bandali. He is the CEO and one of the founders of Ivy Kids, whose visionary leadership has shaped the brand into what it is today. And we're going to dive in deeper on that as we talk. And also joining him is Dick Wren. He is the director of franchise development, and he is focused on the brand's growth and driving overall success into the future. So together, they bring a wealth of knowledge and experience in the early education and franchise industries. And we're excited to learn more about Ivy Kids' journey and their unique approach for early childhood education. So without further ado, let's welcome both Amyn and Dick to the show. Welcome, guys.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
It's great to have you. So I'd like to start with you, Amyn, the CEO. I love the vision question. I love the why question of these brands. Tell me a little bit about how this came to be. What sort of was the why behind the vision, and where are you headed?
Yeah, so I think the why behind the vision really started with, hey, how do we provide high quality care? And what does high quality care look like? And to give you a bit of a background with Ivy Kids, it was actually founded by my parents, Al and Layla. And they faced that conundrum when my brother and I were young kids. You know, we had moved to a growing suburb in Houston, bustling Houston area, and they really just could not find great childcare for my brother and I. We would be in school and then we'd show up with a bump and a bruise, and there'd be no report as to why that was, no teacher to discuss that with, right? There was no curriculum. So my parents, being engineers, thought about childcare and reverse engineered, hey, what would a great school look like, right? What are the things that make childcare unique, and how can this thing be more than just a daycare? So since then, the vision, they're still very active, but I've kind of taken over those CEO reins since, has been a focus on curriculum and enrichment, safety, great food, and then us being successful operators of our corporate locations.
Yeah, right. Profitability definitely helps to run a great business. And you actually, that was brilliant what you just said. I just want to mention something. I was watching an interview recently with Steve Jobs. It was his biographer. His biographer was being interviewed. And it was just talking about the last couple of years of his life. And when he was interviewing Steve, and one of the things he said, well, I don't know if it was that or it was connected, but here's what he said about, he was challenged on some technology and some things they had abandoned and by somebody in an audience. And his response was, we try to reverse engineer customer experience and start from what we want the customer to experience. And that's exactly what your parents had said. And I thought that's the way to do it, right? Because it's like not so much for technology's sake. It's what's the customer want? And that's what your parents did. And it's like, what do these parents need? What do the kids need? And what do we build? And that's what we need to focus on. So I thought that's brilliant. So tell me a little bit about that. What do you think is sort of the differentiators? And Dick, if you want to jump in, or Amyn, either one, but what makes you guys unique? What, if you had to summarize that fairly quickly, what is the differences?
Yeah, I think when you walk into the school, you can immediately tell, hey, this is not just daycare. You're being buzzed in. There's a safety component to that, right? You're being led into a secure facility. You have a wonderful admin team that knows your name, that knows the name of your child. The school, it feels like something that, hey, is kind of an extension from home. It doesn't have that daycare smell. It's a nice classroom environment. These are spacious schools too. The classrooms are not jam-packed with children. We have an adequate square footage where when the children come in, they have an area for dramatic play and for circle time, and for the younger children for having snack and having food, right? So just the way the school looks and feels, I think, has a really big impression. But I would just say our curriculum is bar none our biggest differentiator, with it not only being based off of research, but the fact that parents get assessments of how their children are doing. They can take those assessments and share it with their pediatrician to see, hey, what are the milestones of my child? Are we above or below? Are there any developmental delays, right? And catching that from such a young age has such a great impact on the long-term viability of the child. I think curriculum is a huge differentiator. And I think just our safety and the transparency. One of the things that we do that few childcare providers have is camera access in our classrooms. So parents, they're able to log in securely, they're able to see into their child's classroom, and they know exactly what's going on. And in fact, that tool is probably most popular with grandparents, especially grandparents that live far away from their loved ones. So they can see exactly what's going on to the classroom. They can see, hey, at 10:30, we do this. We have our nap time at 12 o'clock. We have an adequate number of teachers in the classroom. We don't have more children than what the state requires. So I think all of those things, combined, play a big role in overall why parents really value Ivy Kids and why we've been a trusted provider for almost 20 years now.
Yeah, no, you hit all the boxes. It's been a little while for me. My kids are in college now, so I got a different set of things I'm looking at. But I wish I heard that when I put my kids in that position. We worked with some brands, some franchises, weren't bad. Nothing like what you're describing there. Transparency, security, and education, so important. Like just being able to say to my son, because he was an energetic kid, to say, hey, I saw you today. I was watching you, I saw you were doing X, Y, or Z or not doing X, Y, or Z. Just one time you could probably do that and it would be good for the rest of his time there, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have a 19-month-old and now a 7-week-old, but the 19-month-old we have at one of our Ivy Kids locations. So we put her in at 9 months, and I was nervous, just like any parent. And then now having that camera access, boy, it feels great, and if it's been a long day, just going on my iPhone app and seeing into that classroom. But now I'm like, man, when she graduates kindergarten and goes into elementary school, what am I going to do? I'm not able to track that child. So I think that's a conundrum a lot of parents are going to be facing on the road.
I think you're exactly. You're like up-leveling education at that level, and then they go in, get a little older, and it's not as good. I think we should have the transparency all the way through. It would be helpful. I don't know if the kids would want it. But anyway, so let's dive into a little bit. As I hear you guys, and I know I've spent a little time taking a look at the brand, and I do interview a lot of different brands and business models. And the kind of candidate I was going to ask you, Dick, I know that obviously kids have to be darn important, to somebody to run a business like this, but I'm sure there's more to it. So what does a candidate look for? What are you looking for? What kind of qualities?
It's a great question. I think one of our main points is just having someone that has a passion for this industry and a passion for education, and has shown that, and has potentially even has young children that may have experienced the same types of things that other parents are experiencing in terms of trying to find what Al and Layla did, is high quality education space. And then, we really want to try to find someone that has team building experience and management experience, because our facilities, there's a lot of people that are involved in it. So we have center directors and education directors, administrative assistants, and then a whole staff of teachers. And so you really have to have someone who has that skill set that, okay, I can assemble and build and manage a team to make sure that we're following the systems that we're giving to you. If you find someone that's too entrepreneurial, they may not be a good fit for franchising, because franchising is all designed around a proven operating system that we've developed for them. And so if we think that candidate may want to play outside of the sandbox, so to speak, they may not be someone that we feel is right for us.
Yeah, no, that is so key and so important, because we talk all the time about franchise networks, and it's like one body, if you will, right? Like you can't, if one person's affected, the other person's affected eventually, and it's so important to have everybody on board pointing in the same direction, and that's not an easy thing to accomplish. But one of the reasons franchising is so successful is because of that idea. And I think when teams get lax, or the recruiting gets lax in terms of who you're bringing in, that just spells trouble for the brand and for everybody, really. I mean, it's not a good fit for anyone. So it's hard I know it's hard. Guys like you with experience know I'm not going to go down that road, right? I mean, if they're not a fit, they're not a fit. And that's the beauty of franchising, I believe, is that you take a lot of time up front, make sure it's a good fit, but then the success is usually pretty much a matter of following the process, which is awesome. So, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing is a really unique part of Ivy Kids is that it's really a team decision too. This isn't something that just I make or Amyn makes, is that when we have candidates in for Discovery Day, they get to meet everyone on the executive team. And when we conclude that, we all as a team discuss that candidate to make sure that they're a right fit for every department. So they have to be right for operations. They have to be right for marketing. They have to be right for curriculum. And then, of course, they have to be right for the system in its own right, which is, I think, just a phenomenal way of bringing in the right people.
That's actually the first time I've heard it put that way. That's very well put. Because, what I'll follow up with, and either of you guys could take this question, but so what does it then look like, right? So they're going to, if they are the right fit, and then you extend the offer, award the franchise or what have you. What does that look like in terms of onboarding? And that maybe that first year, because I know that's a year where you really want to get people going. There's probably some metrics you're looking at to kind of get them going at a certain time frame. But kind of tell me about that first year experience for folks once they do prove to be a good fit.
Yeah, I think support really starts right at signing the franchise agreement. And we help them first before we look at sites or anything like that, with understanding, hey, let's talk a little bit about what the brand is, right? Let's talk a little bit about our history. Let's discuss, how we sit with the competitive landscape that's out there, right? And why parents make a decision to go with Ivy Kids. As Dick mentioned before, we're looking for people with passion and who've been successful in a previous career going into Ivy Kids. So now they've been very successful in another field and in another career, and now they're brand new in a totally different environment. And most of our franchisees come from other environments other than childcare. So we want to build up their experiences, not just with early childhood development, but also management, financial planning, business planning, site selection. All of these components that make a successful business, we assume that franchisee has not had that experience in the past. Okay. So initially, one of the first steps, site selection, I actually visit each site in person and spend a day with that franchisee, traveling to locations to ensure that, hey, this fits the Ivy Kids standard. Okay. LOIs, negotiation on that, right? Looking at the business plan and looking at the economics. What's the amount of enrollment needed to break even on this location? What is the ramp up? What's the working capital required? What does the financing environment look like? That all are significant pieces that a franchisee needs to understand in order to be successful, right? And then once that school has been closed on, once construction begins on that, really that's when a lot of operational training starts. So we assign that franchisee a pre-opening specialist, and their role is to have bi-weekly calls with that franchisee throughout construction and provide not only project management on how that franchisee is doing for construction milestones, but providing just-in-time training. We don't want to just have one large classroom training, right? And give the franchisee all the information at one period of time, because we've learned as educators, hey, that's a poor way of learning, right? So we've got to practice what we preach in our classrooms. So we want to have just-in-time training right during the correct milestones and make sure that franchisee, as well as their management team who is operating the day-to-day in the business, not only understand childcare, not only understand the minimum standards required to operate a school, but really understand Ivy kids front and back. So by the time they're opening the doors, they feel confident in running the school. Another thing that's unique with our business and our business plan is that you can gain enrollment while the school is under construction. So during that 9-month period when a school is being built, right, you'll have the coming soon sign, and you'll have parents that are inquiring about enrollment. And if we're picking the site correctly, you're going to have a lot of interest during that period of time. So telling that parent about your brand, the differentiators, and hey, if they put $150 or $100, they can have a seat for their child. That really helps as well with the economics of the school and with opening up that location. So those are the kinds of things that we want to instill in our franchisees. That's how we train. And then while the school is open, we have it's 6 straight weeks of us either being at the school or having a checkup. And then gradually we'll have business consultant visits, quality assurance visits, and multiple touch points throughout that franchisee's first year.
That's amazing. I love the just in time because the overwhelm is such a struggle with all of this. I mean, no matter what the business model, when you're launching a franchise business, there's a lot of details. And you're right. A lot of people don't have all those details. They don't have a background and everything. But man, like little things like negotiate, you kind of threw out, what would be profitable with this location? Like that's important. That understanding how size, square footage would impact revenues and profit. Like, how would you know that if you didn't run that type of business, right? And then the idea of, I haven't heard that either. So you guys pre-sell, and that's perfectly legit because you really only have so much space. And so you obviously want to fill it up and be ready to open. So why not just open that dialogue? How far in advance do you do that? Do you do it like 9 months in advance or 3 months in advance or just till you book out, or how does that work?
We do it as soon as we start the groundbreaking. So we'll invite the Chamber of Commerce, we'll invite the mayor, and we'll announce, hey, spots are filling up. So and they really are. I was at a groundbreaking a few weeks ago, and we had a parent that walked by in their stroller, and they said, "Oh, this is a childcare center. Give me some more information." And in fact, they pre-enrolled during that groundbreaking, which was a first for me. But yeah, I mean, I think, childcare is in really high demand. And the phrase childcare deserts is a phrase that Americans probably didn't know before COVID, and now is on the front of every parent with young children. It can be very hard to find high quality childcare. So, when we're starting that construction process, we're in markets where parents are searching for high quality care, and we've got to get our name out there. We've got to make sure that our owners, folks that are representing our brand, understand who we are, what makes us unique, know the details about our curriculum in order for them to have an educated conversation with the parent, for that parent to make that enrollment decision.
Yeah. There's nothing better than natural scarcity. Like I'm a big marketer, right? When I use scarcity, I want it to be legit scarcity. If you can work it, but you don't want to not say it. It's like, we only have so much space. Sure. That's the reality, right? So that works great. It's just, hey, I'd love to talk to you. We do things different. So that's great. So that's a great launch plan. Tell me a little bit, just as a follow-up to this, and then we'll go in a slightly different direction. But in terms of a follow-up, what types of marketing do you think is most important to this kind of a business? Obviously, word of mouth. There is I guess you got a cap, so you want to maintain that full vacancy, if you will, right? But what other marketing do you do, and how do you approach it? Do you just turn it on and off when you need to? Tell me how you approach ongoing marketing. What works best in your business?
Absolutely. I mean, as you pointed out, word of mouth is critical with the success of our schools. Net Promoter Score, we survey our parents twice a year. We look at that number, in detail, and we look at every school, and Net Promoter Score is the best metric for determining your future enrollment, the best metric. But and then in addition to that, I would say reviews and making sure, hey, we're responding to every review. We've got great online presence. Part of our marketing too is our materials that we have on our website. Parents want to know a lot about our curriculum. They want to know about our differentiators. They want to know about the safety. What kind of violations have been had at the school? And those are things that parents can research and they can find readily accessible. You can see in any state the number of citations that school had, whether it's on probation or not. So having a great online presence is really important, but also making sure that those materials are accessible and transparent for parents is really important. Parents do spend a lot of time on our website looking at prospective parents, looking at what are the meal plans, right? What are the upcoming menu items looking like? What's examples of our curriculum? So we want to have those materials readily present. But I would say in addition to that too, I mean, we invest a lot of time and effort on our search engine optimization to make sure that parents are, that we're bringing in the right folks that are feeding in, looking for high quality childcare, that are not just looking for necessarily tutoring or home care, but are looking for something related to Ivy kids. I think those are great ways that we market. But even with old school ways, when parents come in, they come for a tour, right? They want the handouts and the booklets and the brochures so they can read about the curriculum. They want to have that really nice enrollment packet, enrollment folder. And then we want to make sure that, hey, each school really feels like a community asset in the area that they're in. That they're not just providing value to the parents that are there, but the community as a whole. So having great community events like a fall festival, a back to school festival, that's not just open to our parents, but really the greater community, blood drives, those type of things, they may bring new parents, but I think that creates a positive buzz in the community that, wow, Ivy Kids wants to open itself up to this area. It's a beautiful school. It's really trying to make a positive impact on the community.
Yeah. No, I think a lot of brands approach it that way, and that community networking, can't be understated. There's other businesses. Everybody's a family. You never know who has kids that are the right age. So just being out there in the community, and that, I think that's why we all do this though too, right? I know the brand is important and making money is important. But it's about helping people, and it's about you helping people where you live. And that's what I love about all the brands that I talk to, is they do so much for their communities in so many different ways. So, but that is a great way to market, isn't it? That's no better way to say, hey, I ought to check them out. It's like not even just because you did the right thing. And so, and again, if parents are satisfied at this level, it is, they're just going to tell everybody about it. And they're hanging out with people typically that are like them. So I can see where that's a self-fulfilling engine, and you don't have to make it too difficult other than following the playbook, right? Providing great service. So before, I wanted to ask you guys about the business side a little bit, like what it takes to get started and what's possible with the business. Before I do that, though, I wanted to dive just a little deeper into the education, because I know that is so important. And I believe so important to everything. Like, I believe if we could do a better job with education early, that it would impact the world so profoundly. Like, I just don't think we've ever done it that well. And I'm sure you guys are really, closing that gap. So tell me, how does some of the modern technologies that we're hearing about today, we talked about a little before the show, what are you guys looking at? I know you're always keeping an eye on what works best, what will help these kids the most meet them where they are. But tell me a little bit about how you guys stay on top of that and make sure your education is some of the best out there.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So I think we look at a variety of items in order to make sure the education we're providing is fantastic, right? So the first is research, right? What does the research tell us for ECD? One, it tells us how important it is that every dollar invested in early childhood development has massive returns, and it just lowers as you go to college. So going to a great childcare provider has a better return on investment than going to an Ivy League college, believe it or not, right? But, in addition to that, when we look at research, that's a huge aspect that leads to our curriculum development, right? Going into our curriculum, we call our curriculum the multi-prep curriculum because we use a multiple intelligence theory in order to provide great preparation for elementary school, high school, and onwards, right? And the belief behind that is that each child is different and they have their own genius, okay? Multiple intelligences, multi-prep curriculum. For example, you, Rob, maybe you're great learning in a group, right? Having people bounce ideas off each other, and then learning and you're hearing people and then you're taking that in. Whereas me, for example, I like reading a book. I like to sit in a quiet place and I like to absorb by doing that, right? So that is research that is very recent, but has been proven over and over again. And in fact, the pioneer from it was Harvard professor Howard Gardner. So as a result of this research, we took our curriculum and we said, hey, let's take one concept and let's teach it in different ways. So for example, counting in even numbers, let's do that as a group activity. And then tomorrow, let's do that as a reading activity and some quiet time. And then let's go outside, let's grab even number of leaves and let's do that as an athletic contest too. So now we're teaching that in many different ways that children are comfortable with, but also now it allows them to learn it in different ways, right? Yeah. So I think we look at that and we think, okay, that's research-based, okay? Yeah. Other things, when you're talking about technology, STEM, you're hearing that all the time, right? And STEM has been on the forefront with us since we opened our first school in 2005, okay? Since that first school, we've taught science and coding for children ages 2 and up. So they're walking in and we have an enrichment coordinator. We have curriculum, again, from our Ivy Kid Systems team that provides this. And those children are doing science-based activities. They're doing coding on a smart board, or they're using offline tools to still learn the concepts of coding. Okay. Wow. Because another big research piece that's come up has been screen time, right? And there are great components of having a screen, right? When you grow up, you're going to be around screens all day, right? Interacting with the screen in order to do work effectively. But also that can have negative effects when it comes to attention span, when it comes to vision, when it comes to, a host of other things. So we want to make sure, hey, these children are being equipped for a technological future, that they have a step ahead, but also that they have a limited screen time. So that way they're children, they're not addicted to their devices and those type of items. And that we can create a balance where they're still exceeding in this environment. And then I think another facet too about research and what the trends are showing and how we're providing quality care is with languages. Multiple languages have a huge effect on how children perform throughout elementary school, throughout high school, and what their future performance looks like, right? So we provide Spanish as well for ages 2 and up. They're coming in, that enrichment coordinator, one day they're doing a science activity, and then the following day they're doing Spanish. And it feels almost immersive when you're in that Spanish environment. And then things that we look down the road, we were chatting a bit before our today's session, but thinking about AI, I think automated intelligence, like children are going to be exposed to that, and it's going to play a huge role in when they become adults. So us thinking about, hey, what are some ways that we can think about this? How do we look at our operations? How do we look at our development? And how does that tie into the child today. So all of those things, I think, play a big role in who we are.
Yeah, sold. Totally sold. No, that's top notch, and you deserve the name Ivy. So, but I think getting the education early is so key. That's all I ever hear is how much we really learn early on, and if we do it right, I think it really helps kids. So it's great that you're there, and I know parents really care. So, all right, so that's the good news is that you're really helping the world, you're impacting or helping the community. So let's talk real quick about money here. Let's talk about the financial side of things, because one is, the questions often people have is this even doable for me? So they get real passionate. I would love to do something like that, but can I do it financially? Like, what does it really take? So that's question 1A, and 1B would be, what is possible? Like, what can you do in one of these businesses? What is the goal for some? I mean, is multi-unit location very common or could be common? How does one scale or grow? But give me both ends of that. What does it take to get started, and where can it go from a business point of view for those entrepreneurs out there that are interested? And either one of you, Dick or Amyn, it's up to you.
Yeah, I'll be happy to take part of it and then see where it lands. And if Amyn's got to kind of fill in the gaps, he can. But we have several different areas to get involved in our business. We have two different types of prototypical buildings. We have a 10,000 square foot facility, and we have a 15,000 square foot facility. So the only difference in enrollment is about 30 students. So it's 210 on the small and 240 on the larger. So it's not a massive difference in terms of the amount of kids that we can have in the centers. But the startup costs run somewhere between about 4.7 and 5.7 million on the smaller one, and somewhere in about 6.7 to 9.4 million on the larger one. And that's where that franchisee is going to own their own land and their own building and the business as well. We also have a lease program, a long-term lease program where a franchise owner can get in, where we're going to help them find a developer that will buy the land, build the building, and then lease it back to them. And that investment range runs somewhere between about $687 and $1.2 million. And so from a financial requirement, we're really looking for candidates or groups. Doesn't necessarily have to be singles, it could be couples, it could be multiple couples that have a net worth somewhere north of $650,000 combined, with liquid assets somewhere north of $300,000. And the reason that we use those minimums, the startup costs are in our item 7 in our franchise disclosure document, is this is what the lenders look for when we go help them assist in finding financing. And so on a typical land and building investment, the lenders are looking for a 10% cash non-borrowed investment. On a lease program, they're looking somewhere of about a 20% cash infusion with an additional liquid funds that are out there.
Gotcha. Well, that sounds doable though, right? I mean, that is for folks and most franchisees, they tend to be later in their career, and it could be something that they do as a second step. But I mean, that number seems very doable for a couple of professionals that have been working out there for a while and want to do their own thing. It's not, when I think of some numbers, it is a much bigger concern, right? But that's very doable. And you have a couple of ways to do it. But so the ownership, that's interesting. Is that how unique is that with your model, that they typically will have an opportunity to own the building and the real estate along with the business? Is that sounds like it would work out quite well.
It's one of those things where the early franchisees that we've had in the system have all owned their land and their buildings. And over the last 3 to 4 years, because of the cost increase in land and construction, is that it may prohibit some folks being able to get into this business from that type of side of it. Mm-hmm. And so the lease program was done to be able to say, hey, we can get in at a lower investment, but we can still own a very profitable business. And we have really nice, strong item 19 off of our franchise disclosure document numbers in terms of revenues and EBITDARs. And so, it's a strong investment business-wise, and then it can also be a strong investment from a real estate standpoint. But I'll let Amyn tie into that too, also, just because he's got a lot more knowledge in that area than I do.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, having an option to lease, I think that creates a lot of opportunities for folks that, don't necessarily want to tie their capital up in real estate. It allows them the opportunity to open a second location, potentially at a faster rate. And I think too, just addressing your previous question on area development, Rob, I think that is definitely a strategy that we've been interested in. I think we'd have to find that right fit as a franchisee, someone who has that passion, who has an operator, and who has a real concrete plan of how they would open multiple locations in a period of time. Really for us, and what our strategy has been is, hey, let's find you as a great operator. Once you've proven operating that first location really well, then let's talk about opening a second location. And I think that helps with making sure, hey, they're not overextending as far as capital, as far as building out an infrastructure, and that this is the right fit for them and for us as a franchisor. So that's been our growth model so far.
Yeah. When I listen to guys like you talk, I'm thinking to myself, it would be extremely expensive to have you, someone like you to advise me on those types of things, right? I mean, these are just high level things you wouldn't necessarily get involved with in your background unless you happen to be in real estate or you bought different businesses. But as I said, these are the pitfalls that really, keep people from success when they start their own business. So let me ask you this as we wrap the show up. I'd like to ask the question, and I'll give you guys both the opportunity to answer. Is there, any advice that you would give? And you could make this for someone that might be respectively looking at starting a business or a franchise, or somebody in the industry that is maybe in your space. Any tips or advice on how, if you're looking for the business, what you should be looking at for yourself? Or if you're in the industry that you're in, how can they become maybe closer to what you're doing and hit some of those goals that you have, where transparency, security, education. I'm sure you want other brands to lift their game. We all want our kids to do better. So, but what advice would you guys have for either of those audiences?
Yeah, I think from what my parents did 25 years ago really rings today is look at it from the consumer's perspective and work backwards from there. What are the pain points that consumer is going through? What is their destination like, right? And then when you're building those differentiators, how difficult or easy is it to replicate? And I think from that, you can kind of look at, if it's a viable business or not, and if it's worth starting or not. And from that, I think take time, especially if you're thinking of franchising, and invest in opening your own locations, in multiple of your own locations. And I would say ideally in different markets. You're the only way you're going to, I'll put it this way, I would feel more comfortable if I knew that the person franchising has gone through the pain points as myself as a franchisee. That they understand what it's like with a royalty and with a marketing fee, right? They know what it's like being an operator in multiple environments, and that the best practices are coming from someone that's proven. So we took that time over a course of 10 years to really hone in on our operations, open multiple open multiple locations, write all of our processes down before we decided to franchise. And I think that's what led to success today. So I would definitely advise, hey, think of it from the end user, right? The child and the parent for our business, and then open those locations, understand the pain points before deciding to franchise.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, well put. And I think, again, it's why franchising is so successful, but you can see there's a lot of details to consider. It's not easy. And you guys invest 10 years learning the model, perfecting the model, getting better at the model. So that's what you're looking for when you want to partner with a franchise brand. Nick, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I think, franchising in its own right is just a wonderful business model, because the success rates are through the roof compared to a mom and pop, right? The success rate of franchises runs somewhere above 90%. You start your own mom and pop, your failure rate is somewhere about 50%, which is pretty large when you think about that. And from if you're looking at franchises out there, that make sure you take the time to do the research and understand the business model. One of the approaches that I've taken for as long as I've been doing this is education of our business model, and Ivy Kids has a great business model, and there's so much information that someone needs to absorb to make a really good, well-reasoned business decision to decide whether this is right for them. But it also has to be right for the franchisor. I think there's this misconception that if I'm interested in brand A, that I'm going to get brand A, versus, well, let's educate you on our brand, and then simultaneously we're going to learn about you. And then, so I'm educating you on Ivy Kids, and then you're educating us on yourselves. And at the end of the day, if those two match up and it's good for each side and it's a win-win, then it's great. But sometimes it's not right for the franchisor, and sometimes it's not right for the candidate. And that's an approach that we take very seriously at Ivy Kids, is that it has to be a right fit.
Yeah, that's the key to the success. It's the key to the growth, right? It's no one's happy if there's any failure. So, but look, it's like everybody understands it's a business and it takes effort and hard work, right? But you give everybody everything they need to succeed from there. I really appreciate you guys. How can people learn more? What's the best way they can reach out? Obviously, visiting the website. Do you have a dedicated franchise website as well? But why don't you share some ways people can reach out to you guys if they're interested in learning more?
Yeah, we have a dedicated website, ivykidsfranchise.com. We have a lot of blogs that we post on about franchising, about childcare, about the trends that are in childcare. We've got a very active LinkedIn, so follow us on LinkedIn. We post frequently there. And you can always just email myself. It's my first name, Amyn, AMYN, at ivykids.com, and Dick at ivykids. So sorry, Dick, if I'm giving away your email address without your consent. Okay. But yeah, you can reach out to us, and we're happy to talk franchising, happy to talk Ivy Kids. Love to connect.
Yeah, you got it. As long as it's not clickable, we'll share email addresses, right? Put them on the website. That could get hazardous. But I do appreciate both of you guys. I really do. And every time guys do that, I'm just like, I'm blown away. Like, yeah, to be able to talk to you for like 15 minutes about this business would be, it's awesome. Like, you guys have such great knowledge of your industry and this model. I encourage anyone to reach out. And even if you're not quite sure where you're headed yet, you'll learn. There's a wealth of knowledge ahead of you talking to either of these gentlemen. So I encourage you to reach out and learn more. I do appreciate your time. I appreciate what you guys do, obviously, because I have 2 kids of my own. It was always so important. It still is. They're in college now, as I said earlier. But, it's important that they get off to the right start. You never stop worrying about them. So this is so important, especially for young parents. So thanks for the work you're doing. To our listeners, I hope you enjoyed the conversation today. I welcome you back to the next one, and I hope you guys join me again here into the future as we explore changes and in the world and how you guys are adapting. So I appreciate you guys again, and thank you to the audience, and bye for now.
Thanks, Rob.